welcome to the Texas Botanical Gardens in downtown Goldthwaite. My name is Savannah Early and I am the manager of this beautiful slice of paradise right here in the heart of our downtown. So the Texas Botanical Gardens started back 10 plus years ago when we had a small group of visionaries who wanted to beautify the center of downtown. This lot that I'm sitting on right now was actually an old gas station where our Welcome Center now is, and an old rundown hotel called the Sailor Hotel, neither of which were functioning, and they were pretty much just an eyesore right here in the middle of the city. So we had this group of visionaries run by Janice Fisher, was the main woman who came up with the idea for this project, and they wanted to come up with a botanical gardens. They started out wanting a rose gardens, just pretty flowers, and then over time that started to develop into more of a native gardens so that we could teach conservation and proper land management along with our garden. With that, as the project started to snowball, we started to get ideas of turning the gardens into a living museum, not only showcasing the native plants, but showcasing the lives of the first people who lived in this part of Texas 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, and using the plants to tell the story of how they lived off of the land. So behind me is what we call our core story. The core story has signage that tells how this group of people used used the plants for food, for medicine, for tools, for building shelters, for making fiber and basket weaving. And this is Smithsonian grade signage. We had a man by the name of Drew Patterson with the Smithsonian Museum help us design these signs, as well as some of the other exhibits in the gardens. He connected up with an artist, Karen Carr, and got all of our artwork from her. She's also a Smithsonian artist. So we're very proud of our signs. They tell the tale beautifully and get our visitors kind of a taste of what is to come as they start to venture into our gardens. We started figuring out what plants we wanted to have in the gardens. We got a man out of Austin, you may know him, called Scooter Cheatham, very well-known ethnobotanist, and he came and helped us determine the plants that would have been here during the time of the very first people we're trying to showcase, referred to as the hunter-gatherers. Didn't even have the tribal names associated with them yet. And so he came out, and that's how we figured the native plants that we wanted to be in our garden. So right over here to my right, we have Agarita Mahonio trifoliolata, and this is an edible medicinal plant, and the berries are edible. Bright red berries full of vitamin C. The yellow blooms in spring, smell fantastic, and the inner bark of both the stem and the root have a sap that contains berberine, which has antimicrobial properties and is a great tincture for disinfecting. At the beginning of our trailhead, we have some cowpin daisies. These blooms are fantastic for our pollinators. When you sit and watch them for just a couple minutes, you're sure to see a monarch or two this time of year, and they're covered in all sorts of bees and other little butterflies. So this time of year when there's not a whole lot in bloom, we really do rely on our daisies and our asters to give our pollinators a nectar source, especially the monarchs who are traveling that long distance to Mexico. We want to make sure that we have some food for them to give them energy on their way. Also in this area, we have our underground cistern. So you can't see it, but it's underneath our big Legacy Plaza sign. It holds 40,000 gallons of water. It was important for us to have a rainwater capture system to go along with our water conservation mission. The Welcome Center is an inverted butterfly roof to capture maximum rainwater. We get 3,000 to 4,000 gallons off of 1 inch of rain, and that can help water our gardens for several weeks. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's the beginning of our trailhead. We cross the dry creek, and let's continue. In the fall, we really love to showcase our native bunch grasses. We've got inland sea oats, bushy blue stem, little blue stem, some Indian grass. As we go further into the gardens, we'll see switchgrass and we'll see big blue stem. All of them framed beautifully around our dry creek bed. We have some of our asters, twist leaf yucca, the most common yucca in the hill country, another very versatile plant that the indigenous people used. The blades for basket weaving. The roots have saponins to help create a soap to wash clothes and in ceremonial bags. The stalk and the flowers of the twist leaf yucca are also edible. Here we have cedar elm, which is the most common elm in this area of Texas. And underneath it, one of our favorite shade-tolerant shrubs, pigeonberry. And here's the beginning of our Colorado River representation. Water was such an important resource. They had to make sure that where they set up camp, there was flowing drinkable water. These early people used to use the earth to create an oven. Burned rock midden, or earth oven as they are called. They would dig a hole deep down into the earth, put their food source in, use grasses and cactus pads to insulate, have a heat source, fire, coal, and then they would go ahead and bury it, let it sit for several days while they maybe did some flint napping, hanging out around the midden, singing to their food, waiting for the delicious meal to come. And then when it was ready, they would unbury it, they'd pull out their food, and they would feast. So nowadays, when we're out on pastures, when we're looking to find evidence of burned rock middens, they just look like little mounds. And on top of them are pieces of sandstone that was used. There would have been big slabs of sandstone that the food would have been resting on top of. And because the sandstone was directly in contact with the heat source, it would have not only been charred and burned, but it would have broken up into small pieces. And so when they were going to reuse the site, they would toss those pieces and relay a new set of sandstone. And so we would find out on our properties now, if there is evidence of one of these middens, we would find these little tiny sandstone cracked up with little pieces of charring on them. And these sandstone pieces of these midden pieces came from the Wilson Ranch. And one thing we like to let people know is that we don't go and excavate any of these sites. So this particular midden was along a creek and was getting washed away, was deteriorating on its own, and had also been vandalized by people who had jumped their fence to go in and try and find arrowheads. So they had dug through the midden anyway. So the site was already disturbed. You'll also find pieces of flint flakes from when they were napping, and maybe even some shells from any sort of clams or anything that they would have collected from the river to eat. To my right, we have our wickiup, built from black willow branches and grass. So a lot of these bunch grasses that you see growing around would have been a perfect material for them to cut and to bundle up to insulate the top of that willow framework. I have a flint napping station over to my left. Gregsonis flower is a wonderful butterfly plant, as you can see. Great for any butterfly pollinator garden. Here we have a bedrock mortar. This is a slab of bedrock where any sort of nut or grain was processed through a pounding mechanism, which would have chipped away at the pieces of rock, creating these holes. And that's artifacts, evidence that we have to this day of the first group of people. This is our pavilion space where we hold events, and we rent it out for weddings, family reunions. It's the way that we make the money to keep operating costs for the gardens. Here we have a Texas persimmon. Beautiful white bark helps to identify this native fruit tree. And then one of my favorites, flame-leaf sumac. The flame-leaf sumac is a wonderful fall color change. As the name indicates, it looks like it's on fire, turns this vibrant red. And then we have these edible berries that are very tart, and a lot of people will make a sort of lemonade out of the berries. They, the name of this, the genus name is Rhus, and so referred to as Rhus juice or sumacaade. Very delicious, add a little bit of honey. And then over to the left, another one of our great fall color changes is the rich plum color of the rough leaf dogwood. And that is the end of our tour. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful fall afternoon. We look forward to seeing you in person soon.